And now is the time for our inspirational speaker. And tonight we are pleasured with Barbara Root. Barbara Root was born in Youngstown, Ohio. She graduated from Kent State University, receiving a bachelor's degree in elementary and special education. She taught for 36 years at LeBray local schools in Ohio, and in the areas of special education, English, and dramatic arts. She is a drama director at the school, writing and producing as well as directing the plays. Oh, God bless you, I've done some of that myself. Barbara is also a professional storyteller in the Youngstown area, performing in local venues, schools, churches, and private functions. Barbara was the writer and director of Warren, Ohio's historical ghost walk for 15 years, in which she used intuition and inspired writing to connect with the historical figures of that area in order to present their stories. Barbara has been doing private readings since the 1980s and has studied with mediums in Youngstown and Canton, Ohio, as well as those here in Lilydale. She graduated in 2021 from Fellowships of the Spirit School of Meditation, Mediumship and Prophecy, where she became an ordained spiritualist minister. She currently works at Fellowships as the mentor coordinator. Barbara became a registered medium in Lilydale in 2024, where she currently resides. May I present Barbara Root.
Okay. Now, it's always nice to get applause for doing nothing. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I was asked to speak on abundance this evening. And when I thought about it, the word abundance can get a very bad rap. It's mostly defined in our culture as that of materialism, having a lot of stuff. Now, most folks will tell you that accumulation of stuff is something that should be achieved in order that we can show our value and our worth. If I have a lot of stuff, it must be that I am a success. And if I don't have a lot of stuff, I must be some kind of bum, a failure, somebody that's worthless. And if I am so rich and successful that I accumulate a lot of really valuable stuff, then I am somebody to be admired and applauded. I can become famous and even thought of as having these mythical qualities such as wisdom and insight, and I can easily achieve importance in my community. Now, such admiration is the lure and the glamour of accumulated stuff. That's behind the popularity of some shows like The Real Housewives and The Kardashians. Those are examples of abundance in the West. But other cultures don't look upon the collection of material goods as the true meaning of that word. The concept of abundance in Native American culture isn't tied to accumulation or achievement. It is far deeper and richer than any Kardashian. Abundance in Native cultures has to do with relationships, sharing in the sacredness of the earth, and experiencing interconnectedness with each other. At the core of the Native American philosophy is gratitude-centered way of life. This kind of abundance has a way of nurturing the soul that no amount of stuff ever could. Prosperity to them is about relationships. Relationships with people, the land, animals, ancestors, and with spirit. There is a Lakota phrase which I could not possibly say to you, so it translates to say, all my relations. And that speaks to a world view in a prayer of unity, acknowledging that everything is connected. That blows the whole idea of accumulating stuff right out of the water, doesn't it? How does my personal pile of stuff serve the connectedness and the harmony of all that is around me? Well, it obviously doesn't. So perspectives, therefore, have to change. The earth is not just a resource, only there for us to exploit. Giving needs to be as important as receiving, and reciprocity needs to be the order of the day. It's not just about what I can get. So in other words, it ain't all about me. When you think about it, a lot of abundance in the Western culture happens in isolation, working long hours alone, so as to have the ability to accumulate more stuff only for the self. True wealth comes from mutual care and spiritual connection. You are rich when you and the whole world have a balance. Now, nature is the first teacher of prosperity. It's the original provider and teacher. The natural world models generosity, patience, and balance. It's the cycle of the seasons, animal migration, and the blooming of plants that carries lessons of timing and trust and sufficiency. Nature thrives in collaboration, not in dominance. Abundance through cooperation, as in the Iroquois story of the three sisters. Now, this story happened a long time ago in a land far, far away. There were three sisters who lived in a field together. They were sisters, but they did not look alike. They were of different sizes, and they dressed differently. Now, one of the sisters was very young. She was so young that she couldn't stand. She actually would just crawl along, and she always wore green. Now, the second sister, she always wore yellow, bright yellow, and she loved to take off running, especially when the sun was shining and the winds were blowing so mild. And the last sister was very tall. She was the oldest one. She always stood tall and straight, and she would look out and take care of her younger sisters. Now, even though they were very different, they had one thing in common. They loved each other very much. So they would never, ever think of themselves as being parted. Never wanted to be separated. So one day, late in the summer, they were out in the field, of course, and a stranger came into their field. And it was a native boy. And he was just so different. There was something about him. He was straight as an arrow, and he was fearless, just like the eagles who soared in the sky above his head. Oh, they watched him all day. He was just so interesting. He could talk to the birds. He had connections with the smaller animals. And they watched as he put his arrows in his bow, and he would hunt very straight and strong. And they would watch him as he carved a bull with a stone knife. It's very interesting. And as the day wore on, he left the field. And they stood there watching him walk away. And they wondered, where does he go? What does he do? What happens to him when the sun goes down? Now, later on in the end of summer, the little boy came back to the field. And they were very excited to see him. And he was there just in the field. And then when he left, the other sisters noticed that the youngest sister, the one in green, the one who could barely walk, but she was always creeping along. She couldn't even stand by herself without a pole or a crutch. She was gone, and there was no trace of her. Well, the two other sisters were very direct. They were just so upset. And they called for her, but she never came back. And then, just when it started to be fall, when the leaves started to tinge with yellow, the boy came back to the field. But this time he crossed through the field, went to the river, and he went to where the reeds grew on the side of the river. And he was cutting down reeds so that he could make arrows. And they watched him for the day, and he had his hands full of arrows, and it began to rain, and the earth was very soft. So his feet, his moccasins were making footprints in the soft dirt. And they watched him walk away, again wondering, where does he go? What does he do? Later that evening, the sister who always was in yellow, the one who liked to run away, she was gone, and there was no sign of her. The older sister just wondered, where did she go? Did she follow those footprints? But she was left all alone. And she called for her sisters, but there was no answer. Now she stood straight and tall. She never bowed her head in sorrow, but she was very direct, just wondering where her sisters were. And as the fall approached, she would just moan and sigh. Sisters never answered. Now, this shawl that she had around her, it was a green shawl, it began to become very faded and dull. And her hair that was long and it was very blonde and glistened in the sun, it became all faded and it would get all tangled in the wind. And she cried out for her sisters, and it sounded like the mournful cry of the wind. Then one day during the harvest, the boy came back to the field looking for anything that he could use. And he heard the cry of the oldest sister, and he felt sorry for her. So he gathered her in his arms and decided to take her home with him, back to his lodge, back to his family. And when they entered the lodge, the sister was so happy because she saw the other two. They were there. And they had said they followed the boy home because they wanted to know where he lived. And when they came into the lodge, saw his family, and saw how nice and warm and comfortable it was, well, they wanted to stay for the winter. And they decided when they were there, they were going to help that family who was welcoming them in and keeping them nice and safe and warm. So the youngest sister, who was in green, was all grown up by this time, and she was going to help the family by filling up their dinner pot and making sure that it kept full. The sister, who was always in yellow, she was up on the shelf and she was drying herself until the time that she could also contribute to the pot. So the oldest sister decided that she was going to grind her meal and she was going to add it to the pot too. So all three sisters were in the pot, and there they were, going to be inseparable, never to be separated again. And so you see, they were there to help the family who cared for them. Now in this story, the three sisters represent beans and corn and squash. Those are the staple of the Iroquois people. And this Northern American tale represents interdependence of the plants and the people. Now the beans supply nitrogen to the soil for all plants. The corn supplies a pole or the crutch for the younger sister to climb, and as well as being shelter for her other low-growing plants. And the squash holds moisture to the ground. So they provide food for the people who in turn care for the plants and help them grow. So you see that this collaboration leads to abundance. Now there's also a part of the Native American culture that centers around the concept of enough. Now many indigenous teachings warn of the dangers of excess and imbalance. These ideas are very prized in the Western culture. You know, there's a popular saying that he who dies with the most toys wins. Well, it's very different in the Native cultures, and they have many stories about greed. And this is a story about Glooskap. This is a Northern Native Americans all have a version of Glooskap. He's from the creation stories, but he's a mythical creature who is always there to help the humans. Now, this story is Glooskap and the Four Wishes. Now, Glooskap has always helped the humans. He did so much for them that he got tired. He was doing so much for his children and his children's children and his children's children's children. He decided that he needed a rest. So he was going to take Grandma Woodchuck, and they were going to find an island way far away from the humans, and they were going to stay there and they were going to rest. Now these islands have reported to be around Lake Champlain, possibly off of the coast of Maine, up that far. And both of those areas are very, very foggy. The Indian people say that that's Glooskap and he's smoking on his pipe. That's what makes all that fog. But before he left, Glooskap told the humans, now, if you wanted to come and see me, you can come. And if you're going to make that whole long trek, when you get there, I will grant one wish to you. So there were 4 Abenaki men who decided that they were going to make the trip to go see Glooskap. Now, the first man was very poor. He had nothing. So he was going to go see Glooskap, and he was going to ask him for many possessions so that he could be set for life. The second man was very vain. He was tall, but he wanted to be even taller so he could be heads above all the other men. And he would even pile his hair up on his head to make him taller, put moss in his sandals so he could just be ever so tall. The third man was afraid of dying. So he wanted to make sure that Glooskap would give him the wish of never passing away, that he would live longer than any other man ever would. Now the fourth man, he was a hunter. He was a hunter for his family. He was a hunter for the village. Problem was, he was a crappy hunter. So he was going to go see Glooskap, and he was going to ask him if he could make him a better hunter. So the 4 men took off to go see Glooskap, to find him. And they got into one of the canoes, and they were going out there. Well, the water was just so rough that they could barely make it through. And so the first man, who was a very good singer, decided he would sing a song to the water to make sure that the water would calm itself. And it did. But then the winds kicked up, and they were afraid of toppling over. The second man offered the wind a measure of tobacco as a gift, and the wind took the tobacco and calmed down. They were getting closer, and there was a whole group of whales that were coming around, circling the canoe. And they thought that these could be dangerous. They could capsize the boat. They could be killer whales. So the one man, the third man who was afraid of dying, he was also a very good artist, and he had sculpted many, many animal sculptures out of stone. He made one of a whale, and he offered it to the whales as his way of, giving them a gift. So they accepted the gift, and they left them alone. Now they were getting closer and closer to the island, and the fog came in, and they could barely see their hands in front of their face. So they knew that they were getting close. That was Glooskap. He was smoking his pipe. So the fourth man decided that he would have an offering to Glooskap and smoke his own pipe to show that they came in peace. And the fog disappeared. So they finally found Glooskap, and they came to him, and he said, well, you have come this far. Obviously, you are here, and you would like a wish, and I will grant whatever it is that you ask. So the first man says, I have been poor my whole life. I have seen so many people have so many things. I would like to have many, many possessions. Second man said, I would like for people to look up to me. So I would like to be tall and very important. Third man said, I would like to live longer than any man ever has or ever will. And then the fourth man said, I would like to be a mighty hunter. Now, it's not for me, it's for my family, it's for the village. I would like to do this so that I could provide for them because I have been doing such a poor job. Now, Glooskap looked at the four men and he smiled at the fourth one, shook his head, and he said to them, I will give you each a pouch, and you take this, but you must promise to never open the pouch until you get home in your own lodge, and then you can open the pouch. And they all agreed. So they got in the canoe, they waved goodbye, they go back to their land. Now when they make it to shore, the first man who wanted the possession said, I'm taking this canoe. And the third man was the one who owned it, the one who was never going to die. He said to him, well, I'll be living a long time. I'm sure I'm going to come across another boat again, so go ahead and take it. And then the three of them just went on to home, and the first man was in the boat. He's going to paddle his way home. Now, as he went, he was thinking about all the wonderful things that he was going to have, that he never had, that he always admired from other people. And he just couldn't wait. He said, I'm going to open this pouch, and I'm going to look inside, and I'm going to just peek in there and see what it would be. Once he opened the pouch, all these wonderful things started coming out. There was gold, there was buckskin, there was wampum, there were beads, everything that he always wanted. And he was just laughing and just watching it pour out of the pouch onto the boat. It was just amazing to him. And it kept coming and coming. He thought this was really wonderful. And it piled all on top of him until he realized this was a problem. The boat was getting full. It was getting heavy. It was beginning to rock a little bit, sink a little bit. So he tried to take the pouch, and he was trying to stop the stuff from coming out of the pouch, but he couldn't. And it just kept coming and coming. He was tangled up in all of this. The boat got really heavy, began to sink. And because he was so tangled, he couldn't get away. He sank right down with it and he drowned. Now the second man, who was walking along, and he's coming along the ridge of a mountain as he's going home, and he's thinking about his wish of being tall. And he thought, now, what could be in this pouch that's going to make me tall? Could it be like a cream or a balm? If I put it on my skin, will that make me grow, be tall? So he thought, I think I'll take a look, and I'm going to open this up and put a little bit on me, so once I make it to home, it's just going to be so amazing how everybody's going to look up to me. As soon as he opened up that pouch, boom, he turned into a tall pine tree, the kind that you have seen on the side of mountains. And there he was and is to this day, just up there, and when the wind whistles through the pines, you can hear the whispering of him talking about how tall and wonderful he is and how he can look down on everybody else. Now the third man is walking along, and he thought, well, I've got this pouch, and I'm going to live forever. So what the heck, why should I wait? And he opened up his, and as soon as he did, boom, he was transported into this huge, great big boulder. And there he is, to this day, many, many seasons, and many more seasons to come, and he will last longer than any man ever was. Now the last man was thinking about, he was so glad that finally he was going to be able to have the ability to go out and hunt for his people, his village. And when he got home, he got to his lodge, sat on the floor, opened up the pouch. When he opened it, there was nothing inside, nothing. And he wondered what was going on. All of a sudden, he was filled with the knowledge of what it takes to hunt, what he needed to do, what kinds of things he should take, at what time of day he should go, where he should go. He just had this knowledge. And then he heard many voices, and he realized that these were the voices of the animals speaking to him, telling him about their ways, that he began to understand the animals, and he saw the respect that they had for him, what they were giving to him, and he gave respect back to them. Well, he went out and he was the best hunter that ever was. He went out, and when he went to hunt, he only took what he needed, and that's what he brought back, so that there was enough for everybody, and there was more for the next day. So he realized that what he was given, the gift that he had, was the most valuable gift of all that Glooskap could give him. Now, the Potawatomi tradition has that the following elements as a guideline of how to interact with the natural world. It's called the Honorable Harvest, and it's in the book, Braiding Sweetgrass. And it goes, never take the first, ask permission, listen for the answer. Take only what you need and use everything you take. Share it, give thanks, sustain the ones that sustain you. And that is sacred economics, the framework for right relationships. Not just with nature, but if you do that with money, with food, with time, with energy, that's sacred economics. If we consume without awareness and without gratitude, we won't feel abundant. We're going to be left with a feeling of scarcity. And then what we do, we end up trying to numb that feeling or distract ourselves, and then we try to have more, just get more and more. What we crave really is a connection or a purpose. The earth is generous with us, but only if we approach it with respect and restraint. Prosperity is not in the buying of everything, but in knowing what it is that we have, and it's enough. On occasion, we experience disconnection from abundance, and those times it's good to remind ourselves of the wisdom of the native teachings. Whenever feeling that you don't have enough, look at that which cannot be taken from you. That's your love, your voice, your values, your gifts. And when you feel unseen, remember that your ancestors dreamed of you. When you feel scattered, come back to the earth. She always welcomes you. Know that abundance isn't something we chase, but rather it is something that we remember. Native Americans remind us that abundance is not a finish line, but it's a way of being. It's living with respect, gratitude, and relationship. No, in a world obsessed with accumulation, true abundance is achieved when we return to the heart, return to the earth, and return to each other, and return to the idea of enough. That kind of abundance would never get a bad rap. So thank you.